Today we're tackling one of the coolest and often most challenging topics in storytelling: writing unforgettable villains. As Alfred Hitchcock once said, the better the villain, the better the film. And that philosophy holds true for novels, short stories, and TV. Any story that you are writing, a great villain can elevate your entire plot, while a cliched, forgettable villain will sink it very quickly. So let's level up your villain writing game. The first rule is to embrace moral ambiguity and redemption potential. This is something that not enough writers explore. You need to allow your villain the possibility of growth, or at least moments that make us ask the question, could they be redeemed? Could they find redemption? A villain who might change is a lot more compelling than one who is evil and there's no chance of them ever changing. A good example is Johnny Lawrence from The Karate Kid, who starts as the ultimate bully.
Just break my radio!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't touch it, punk.
No, this is just
What? Death?
But fast forward to Cobra Kai and we see layers developing to his personality, past trauma, regrets, and attempts at doing better and becoming better. And so why does this work so well? It leaves the reader with an element of what if, and that keeps readers guessing and it keeps them emotionally invested. It also helps to blur the line between hero and villain, and that makes your story much deeper than just a simple good versus evil tale, which quite frankly gets boring fast. So how do you actually implement this? You need to give your villain redeeming qualities, such as loyalty to a friend or a genuine compassion for a single individual. And you can show internal conflict. Maybe they struggle with their actions but feel forced to continue due to external pressures that they have. So they might be being blackmailed, it might be desperation, or it could be revenge. The second way to achieve this is personal connection to the hero. When there is a direct emotional tie to your protagonist, this can make every confrontation crackle with tension. When the hero and villain have a shared past, the conflict becomes so much more than just a physical or external battle. It becomes personal. And a great example is Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy.
You'll soon find out that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself.
Their rivalry isn't just about Hogwarts houses, it's about family expectations, societal pressures, and the personal insecurities that they both have. This works because each showdown carries an undercurrent of emotional baggage, and the hero's goals feel more urgent when they are tied to a personal history. Practically, how can you implement this the next time you're writing a villain? Well, have them share a mentor, or maybe they share a tragic event in their past. Let them be former friends or family members turned enemies. That personal dimension raises the stakes. The third way to write amazing villains is to create a villain who sees themselves as a hero. A villain who believes they're on the side of righteousness or acting for a greater good is a fascinating villain. This mindset transforms them from just a mustache twirling caricature into a complex character who forces readers to question moral lines. A great example is Hannibal Lecter, who views his art as part of a refined palette. And so he twists morality into this personal philosophy. And this works because when morality becomes subjective, it forces readers to confront uncomfortable grey areas. It often can spark empathy, and sometimes it sparks empathy for the villain, which we don't actually want to feel, which is fantastic. At the very least, it will help create an understanding of the villain's twisted worldview. The way to do this is to show how the villain justifies their actions, and then weave in a backstory that explains this skewed perspective that they have. It could be something, again, like a personal tragedy that led them to believe these drastic measures they're taking are justified and are really their only option. Number 4 is to give them believable motivation. We've all seen the evil for evil's sake villain, and these fall flat. Because a villain with understandable, if not agreeable, goals resonates so much more powerfully. Love, revenge, or even fear can drive a character to dark extremes. And the reason this works is because these are emotions that we have all felt ourselves. A good example is Eric Killmonger in Black Panther, who wants power and retribution for his people's suffering.
Justice your king couldn't deliver.
I don't care that you brought Claw. Only reason I don't kill you where you stand is because I know who you are.
You might not condone his violence, but you're able to understand his pain. And this works because it gives readers an insight into the villain's motivations. It can make them empathize on some level, which of course amps up the tension. Relatable motivations are so important because they make the villain's actions more believable, which then grounds your story and ultimately has your readers a lot more invested. So how do you do this? Clarify the root cause. Is it childhood trauma? Are they protecting someone they love? What is driving their evil behavior? And show how their perspective evolved over time, not just in a single moment. Number 5 is that you need to give a villain true competence. If you have a villain who never wins or never actually poses a real threat, then you won't keep your audience on edge. You have to showcase their strengths and their intellect so readers believe they could actually defeat the hero. A great example of this is Darth Vader, who initially overwhelms the protagonists in Star Wars. The very first scene that we see is him taking control of another spaceship and capturing Princess Leia. And so right from the outset, we know that this villain is someone to be reckoned with. He is not just a fake threat. He might even be able to defeat the heroes. And to take this a step further, there is a whole movie in the trilogy dedicated to Darth Vader winning and actually defeating the heroes, which raises the stakes for the final installment even more, because truly, as the viewer, you don't know which way it could go. Each encounter with someone like this who's truly formidable will raise the stakes and make your story more thrilling. It will keep people reading because the outcome is not guaranteed. So like I've said, the way to do this is to let the villain succeed in small or even major ways early on. Give them distinctive talent, strategic brilliance, powerful allies, or resources that the hero lacks. Next up, you need a villain who is adaptable. If the villain is static and never changes, well then he becomes predictable, which will make him boring. A cunning villain who can pivot under pressure will keep your readers guessing and your hero on their toes. Kaiser Sose in The Usual Suspects constantly adjusts his approach and so is staying one step ahead of everybody else. It works because it keeps the story unpredictable. The hero can't rely on the same old moves to beat the villain. If the villain is evolving, well then the hero must also evolve. And this keeps readers engaged because they're trying to figure out the villain's next play. And so how do you do this? You show the villain learning from failures or from near misses. You make them resourceful. They might have contingency plans or they might have very loyal allies. Something small that can also make a big difference when writing your villains is to give them memorable quirks. A small but effective detail that gives your villain a signature trait. It could be a habit, a mannerism, but it will make them unforgettable. It could be something as simple as an unusual accent, a trademark weapon, or a chilling catchphrase. A good example is Dr. Evil from Austin Powers, with his quirky pinky gesture and his exaggerated speech patterns that make him iconic. This works so well because these distinctive traits anchor a character in the audience's mind. It actually humanizes the villain while also making them stand out as someone that's unique. So the way to do it is to choose something that aligns with the villain's personality or with their backstory. Avoid overdoing it, otherwise the quirk will become silly, unless of course humor is your goal. Next is to use humanizing touches. So even the scariest, the baddest villains have fears, weaknesses, or values. So don't be afraid to show your villain's vulnerabilities. It's often the contrast of that ferocity and that fragility that can truly create a riveting character. Let's use Johnny Lawrence as an example. Despite his bravado, he struggles with low self-esteem, financial woes, and his guilt about the past. Readers resonate with the emotional truth. Nobody is ever going to be 100% evil in real life. They don't spend their entire day from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep being evil. And so it opens the door to these nuanced arcs where we can see the good and the bad. A great way to do this would be to show them caring for a pet or a child. It shows that there is even something they themselves hold dear. And by revealing a hidden soft spot or regret that influences their choices, it makes them a more addictive character. Next up is to avoid cartoonish evil. Subtlety can often be a lot more chilling than giving the villain these huge monologues and too much detail. A quiet, reserved character who shows cruelty in deliberate small ways can often be the most frightening of all. A good example is Dolores Umbridge in Harry Potter, who rarely yells, but her demeanor and her insidious methods are terrifying. And this works because it creates an unexpected contrast between politeness and the evil, which for us as the reader is deeply unsettling when we find that in a character. It also feels a lot more realistic. And realism can be far scarier than a villain who just doesn't feel like they could be real. It's going to make the reader more engaged because they could actually imagine this villain being a real person. The best way to do this is to let the villain's evil actions speak for themselves rather than relying on constant declarations. Just focus on the evil actions. Focus on psychological manipulation or oppression to build that dread. Another tip is to make their evil personal. They most likely will be out to conquer the world, but maybe not. If their villainy directly impacts your protagonist on an immediate, intimate level, readers will care a lot more. For example, the Joker terrorizes Gotham, but more importantly, he fixates on Batman specifically.
Then why do you want to kill me? I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No. You complete me.
Which makes every conflict this duel and this heightened battle. It works because it turns this villain-hero dynamic into something so much more than a save the city scenario. Every clash between them stings both psychologically and physically. The best way to do this is to show how the villain's goals collide specifically with the hero's greatest fears or desires. So show that clash and make the villain's triumphs or failures weigh heavily on the hero's emotional journey. With the Batman example, we can see the weight of what is going on and how it rests on Batman. There you have it. Those are 10 strategies to help you craft villains that will leap off the page and importantly linger in your reader's mind. In the comments down below, let me know which of those tips was your favorite and that you will be implementing next. YouTube will now be recommending another one of my value-packed writing videos right here to help you write an amazing story. So go ahead and watch that one next.